It's a reality of daily life in Europe. The fear that terror attacks can happen anywhere, anytime. It's been a grim few years. Attacks that have struck at the very heart of the continent, targeting transport hubs and vulnerable locations, but also places where people work and socialise. While the attackers in Belgium and France received training on the front lines in Iraq and Syria, their paths to radicalisation began much closer to home. Around 5,000 people have travelled across Europe to fight in Iraq and Syria. A report has indicated that of those fighters, almost 3/4 have come from just 4 countries, at the very heart of the European Union. It's estimated that 30% of those who fought in Iraq and Syria have returned. While those figures represent a fraction of Europe's Muslim community, the attacks have brought the issue of radicalisation to the forefront of the security agenda.
Our intelligence service said that we have to be aware that now, by the higher pressure in Syria itself, that these people can come home, and so we have to detect them.
But the pan-European game plan for identifying such threats doesn't appear to be working. The EU strategy that's being constantly revised aims to disrupt networks and identify those who are recruiting potential terrorists. But the rest of the plan, which talks generically of promoting democracy and justice, makes it very clear Europe is far from united on how to combat such threats. The events of the last 18 months suggest the homegrown radicals are still a major threat. Now a new wave of legislation is being passed by European governments to try and tackle the problem.
Chaque époque a ses défis. La lutte contre le djihadisme est sans doute le grand défi de notre génération.
France declared a state of emergency in November, which is still in effect. It gives police the right to set curfews and search houses without warrants, as well as closing theatres, bars and museums if needed. France also last week announced a new $48 million initiative aimed at preventing individuals from joining extremist movements. This week, the British government unveiled new measures granting the security services more power.
Legislation will be introduced to prevent radicalisation, tackle extremism in all its forms, and promote community integration.
They are proposing bans on those with so-called extremist views from working with young people, as well as the records of individuals with convictions for terrorism being disclosed to employers. Not everyone in Britain agrees with this path. Several Muslim groups have claimed the laws are divisive and unfairly target their communities. While the conflicts in Iraq and Syria continue to act as a magnet, Europe scrambles to deal with the threats from an enemy within, even at the risk of restricting civil liberties and damaging community relations. But will these laws help protect Europe, or will they further alienate marginalised communities? The biggest challenge ahead may be to ensure that Europe's battle against homegrown radicalisation doesn't itself become too extreme. Francis Collins, The Newsmakers.